I made these modular roads for my post-apocalyptic miniature games for less than £5. Today I'm going to show you exactly how to make them yourself at home, and equally how this seemingly simple build almost turned into a disaster. Roads are one of the best starting points for making your own terrain at home, in my opinion. I recently made some dirt roads from my medieval tabletop games with some MDF offcuts and milliput, and now I wanted something a little more modern while equally being functional for the tabletop. When it comes to size, I've made each of my road tiles exactly 1 foot by 1 foot. Normally the games I play work in a 3 foot by 3 foot playing space, so this gives me not only a great way to help cut through the game space evenly, but equally a handy way of sizing up my game table too. Now, I purchased a large 6mm thick MDF board from my local hardware store and got it cut into 1 foot by 1 foot squares. Some hardware stores will do this in store for you up to a certain limit. It's super useful, cuts down on your build time, so be sure and ask if this is a service your local hardware store also does. By buying a large MDF board and cutting multiple tiles, each tile basically cost about 80p. So with my tiles in hand, it was time to start measuring out the dimensions of where everything would go. I want this to be roughly to scale with my 32mm miniatures, as I'm primarily using it for Fallout Wasteland Warfare. I wanted at least 2 miniatures to be able to stand side by side on the sidewalks without feeling squished. And when I looked at some reference imagery from Fallout 4, it seemed like the sidewalks were pretty chunky anyway, which is great for me and my plans. I then settled on the idea that the sidewalks would be about 8cm wide, meaning the roads would take up the remainder of the space, being about 14.5cm wide. Materials wise, I picked up some XPF foam that was also 6mm thick online. If you're in the UK, it can be pretty tricky finding this stuff, but I've gotten all my foam from the underfloor heating store. It's always been reliable, so I'd recommend going to them if you're looking for some. From one of their sheets, there's enough to make 8 to 12 road tiles if there's no wastage, so each tile's foam will cost us about 99p. For the roads, to get a really nice realistic texture, I'm actually using sheets of 120 grit sandpaper. If you're looking to do the same, be sure to steer clear of branded packs. They'll cost you at least 4 times as much from what I found. I got my local hardware store's own brand sandpaper. It cost me $4.75 for 10 sheets. We'll be using 1 and a bit sheets per board, so let's say about 50p per sheet. With all my measurements figured out, it was now just a case of assembling. I started by gluing down the sandpaper since the sidewalks were going to be going on top of this, and I used the brown style Gorilla Glue. Gorilla Glue is usually always my go-to. It's super strong, it's reliable, but there was one thing I forgot about this specific type of glue that they make. It expands. You see, the sandpaper sheets aren't the same size as the MDF boards, so I always had to add a tiny little strip to the end, and because there's a slight gap there, the glue expanded to fill it. Now, I did have cardboard pressed down in this area, so it wasn't as bad as it could have been, but on some of them it did take some cardboard with it when I tried to remove it. It's not a major problem though. We'll actually come back to this in a second. I'm going to show you a really simple fix if this happens to you at home. Next, it was time to add the sidewalks. I drew them out on the XPF foam and cut them out. Some of the cuts aren't perfect lines whatsoever, but hey, I'm learning and there's room for improvement on the next one. With the main elements now added, I began scoring into the hard foam with a pen to mark out slabs on the sidewalks and curbstones. Now, the slabs in Fallout 4 are really big, surprisingly big actually, which is why they're so big in my build, but you could absolutely make them whatever size you want to, or maybe even get a textured roller and use that to make whatever pattern you want on them. But how did I get that worn, rough texture on the pavement, I hear you ask? Well, it's simple. A ball of tin foil, or aluminum foil if you're watching this in America. Just roll a big ball of this stuff and press hard as you roll it about the sidewalk. It'll press the texture of the foil into the foam and leave you with this really natural looking texture that I really love. Big thank you to Lackey actually over on Zorpazorp for inspiring me with that technique on his Dogoldur build. If you're looking for some really cool, I guess, builds of some massive terrain, and equally to pick up some really great techniques as well, if you're going to start building your own terrain at home, check out Zorpazorp here on YouTube. Brilliant channel, and like, he's a lovely guy. So remember the areas of the road that got a little ruined by the glue? Well, I got some rubble basing materials that I had, applied some decorator's PVA to any of the imperfections, like glue that had expanded out from the foam, and just covered them with the stones. It's really simple, but it helps add way more texture and uniqueness to each tile, while also covering up your mistakes. Then it was just down to the painting side of things. Now, it's important to note that aerosol cans will melt foam unless you purchase a specific brand or paint from far enough away. It is possible, but it's tricky and time consuming. Now, I got the primer onto the tiles and then using some masking tape and paper covered up the roads so that they wouldn't get grey paint on them when I was painting the sidewalks. In the interest of time, I wanted to airbrush the grey onto the sidewalk, but my airbrush decided to give up the ghost completely and basically just clog every minute or two while using it. And this is where this project just became a massive pain in my ass. I ended up having to empty and clean the airbrush constantly, maybe only getting a fifth of each sidewalk done before it would just start to spit and spray and clog, and I'd have to take it all apart, dump the paint, and start all over again. And at that point, I just completely gave up with it. The airbrush has since retired, brushes were brought out, and in essence I just gave the pavements an undercoat in dungeon grey with the brushes, and then just literally dry brushed on some uniform grey and ash grey for highlighting. Now, in order to get the road markings, I got my masking tape out again, did my best to find the centre, and then just painted some straight lines on there. And once it was dried, I got a big dry brush and dabbed some black paint over it just to break it up and make it look more worn. I've learned a lot from this build that I'm taking into my next one, which is slightly larger than this, but this is a great way to create road tiles for your games without breaking the bank. As for my airbrush, well, I actually went out and bought a new one for £20 to see if it could beat my now retired £135 at What a Revolution. If you want to see the results for yourself, click this video right here.